Recently, the internet has been abuzz with talk of people moving from the academy to the industry, and it's particularly common in hematology oncology, my field. Why? Well, because there's lots and lots of companies working in the hem-onc drug space, so there is no shortage of jobs. There's perhaps as many jobs as there needs to be. Everyone could just go right over right now. I don't know, but it appears to be a lot of jobs. Yet, people are leaving. That's interesting. Why does this happen? There have been different attempts to answer it. I thought I'd talk about, why I think it's happening, and also a little bit of a relation to how I think we let ourselves down in the academy, particularly during COVID-19. So let's talk about it. Why is it happening? I think it's not really hard. It's not a big secret why people are going to the industry. There's three reasons. Number one, you're going to get paid more. On average, you're probably going to get paid more than you're getting paid now. You might get some of that income in terms of stock. And that's better because then you can escape some of the taxes that we have to pay on income. But you're going to get paid better, I think, for the most part. Very few people are going and getting a pay cut. Mostly they're going up. And it can potentially be really, really high if you join a startup that, doesn't make anything of value, but nevertheless sells itself to another company. You can make a lot of money. So that's one thing, more money. And people like more money, whether they want to admit it or not, people like that. Number two, fewer hours. I think that's the other thing. People in the industry, they work hard, no doubt about it. But there are people in the academy, particularly people who have busy clinics where you are obliterated at least twice a week, 3 times a week. You're in clinic really, really late, and then you're doing all that other follow-up. And it's a high-stakes environment. There's no room for error. People need you to be the best. You don't get to call in sick. In fact, I don't even think that that's possible for a lot of people because what they're doing is so unique to them that what it means to call in sick would be to cancel the entire half-day clinic with all the repercussions that come from that, including that you're going to have to make up all that work either the next day or the day after as soon as you can pull yourself together and get back in there. So that is really inflexible. And if you need to call an audible at the last minute, good luck if you're doing something that, really is patient-centered and matters a lot. In the industry, a lot of people are working fewer hours. Some people are finding places that they can put themselves where nobody really knows what they do, and so they get away with not doing that much. More money, flexible, and often fewer hours. I want to say that's not a hard and fast rule, but flexibility is probably a little bit higher. And then the third reason, big number 3, you feel as if in the academy, you're really 100% replaceable or your work is not that important. In other words, you're not uniquely contributing. And you feel that way because for a lot of people that is true. That is really, in fact, actually probably true for lots of people. That you are 100% replaceable. And the truth of that is that when you're mostly running large studies or you're mostly doing sort of bread and butter stuff, you could put somebody else in there. They're going to do a good job too. Let's not be crazy. Other people are going to be able to do a good job too. Doesn't mean you're not providing value. There are lots of jobs in this world where somebody else could do it too, but you're doing it, so you get credit for that. That's real work. But you are replaceable. And when it comes to the research side, I think a lot of people feel like their research doesn't really matter. It's not going to really improve people's lives. It feels kind of pointless. Maybe it's promoting the special products of a particular company. And again, I think that's mostly probably an accurate assessment of the research because most research is not true, and even less research is useful, and true and useful is what we need. And very few people, I think, are doing truly trailblazing, provocative research that's trying to change the way other people think. And proof of that is simple. When you are doing that kind of work, you're going to get pushback. You're going to get a lot of heat. You're going to get people criticizing you and attacking you. And if you're not getting the attacks, well, they're not pushing back on anything that hard. You're not really pushing that hard on anything. If you're not getting attacks, you're not doing a good job. If you're in the policy space or the trial space, etc., you're really sort of just carrying out the status quo. Maybe you're trying to innovate some novel way, but you're mostly doing it within the constraints of what has been set. This brings me to the point I want to make about COVID. I tweeted this the other day, and I really think there's some truth to it, which is I understand why people who work in the laboratory, who pipette all day, I understand why these people didn't engage in the COVID-19 debates. They didn't have a word to say about school closures or all the other, tens of millions of things we did because that's not their ballpark. They're in the laboratory ballpark and they stayed in their ballpark, and maybe they're a little irritated that for a while some universities say, you couldn't even go and do your pipetting even if you pipetted by yourself. Maybe that's the extent of their involvement. I understand why they stayed out of it. What I do not understand for the life of me is why people who work at the intersection of social policy, health disparities, inequity, why they stayed out of the debate. I really don't understand why they stayed out of the debate. People who worked on early childhood development, life cycle things, why did they stay out of the debate? Doesn't make any sense to me, because you're doing that work because you believe that that's an important space, and I believe that too. And then you have literally stumbled over, you've tripped over the single most consequential decision of 50 years, and you don't want to have anything to say about it. You want to be quiet, mum's the word on school closure, even though the magnitude of impact of school closure is perhaps 1,000,000 times or 100 million times greater than whatever it is you're busying yourself with in your grant. That to me is actually emblematic of why I think people leave. They're so consumed with sating the money managers and keeping the grant going and doing whatever they quote unquote promised. They don't call an audible and actually tackle the single most consequential decision of our lifetimes in that space that they care about. And the fact that you feel so constrained, you're unwilling to do that, reveals to me that you must be deeply dissatisfied with what you're doing. And I think that is it for a lot of people. That's the big number 3, the feeling that you're deeply dissatisfied with what you're doing. And then, the grass is always greener. You go over there and maybe you come back. I don't think it's much more complicated than that. Sometimes people tell me that, in the academy, you don't really know how you're doing. People don't give you, not a video goes by that I don't get some interruption. Okay. Now, one of the things people say is that they say in the industry you constantly get feedback of how you're performing, how you're doing, feedback. Am I the last person who suspects that this whole constant feedback is probably not good for us? It's not the way world worked for most of human history, and you probably don't need feedback from people who aren't qualified or suited, and you don't respect, and you don't really want their feedback anyway. But anyway, put that aside. In the academy, the argument goes that you just don't know how you're doing. You can spend a decade in the job, you don't get promoted, you didn't see it coming. Really? Is that so? I don't think that that's so. I think you do know how you're doing. Here's how you know. You look over at that person over there, and you look over at that person over there, and you look them up on PubMed, and you see how many papers they're publishing, and you see how many grants they're getting, and then you look at yourself, and you say, hey, how am I doing? And that's all it is. It's just a comparison relative to your peers. That's all it is. It's all it ever was. It's all it ever will be. And you can make 25 people first author and put all those little symbols on there and say we're all equally first author, but then that guy's going to do it and that person's going to do it over there. And when they all do it, then we're all in a new rat race and we're all got to do more 25 first author papers, and, there's no point to it. You can change whatever goalposts you want, but it's all a relative competition. And that's not a surprise. And you do know how you're doing because you can simply look up other people of your rank and see what they're up to and put yourself where you think you belong. And even if you are upwardly biased, there's some things you can't bias that much because they're objective realities. That's one thing. The other thing I hear people say is that they don't feel like they're supported. They don't feel like people are rooting for them. They don't feel like they're getting all the help they need. Well, join the club. It's not, of course that's the case. Of course that is the case. What are you, surprised? I was like, wait till they stick 4 knives in your back and you still have to do your work, okay? Try to do it under duress, under active hostility. Now we're talking. Now you're getting closer to what the real experience is like. Yeah, they're not going to support you, sure. Are they sabotaging you actively? Well, then, now you're talking. Now, that's the ballpark. That's the game. And you have to put your head down and overcome it. That's the challenge. And it's like anything in life. If something is coveted, if something is perceived to be a nice spot to have, which I think a lot of people see a very senior role in the academy as, it's coveted. They want that role. A lot of people do want it. And there are not that many of them. There's only so many of that role. Well, then, you put those two things together, and it's going to be a competition. It's going to be an all-out competition. And, if you don't feel like somebody's boosting you up into the spot, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're expecting too much. You'll be lucky if they're not dragging you down to try to hinder you. You're lucky if they're not doing that. And so I think you need to be much more resilient to recognize that it is a competition, that there are very few senior spots, and to outperform and just to I think, do better than everyone else around you. And part of what that means is like to make yourself better than everyone else around you by training, by reading more and thinking more and doing a better job at the intellectual aspects of the job, which is what it is. It's a certain type of thinking that's validated in the academy. It's analytical thinking. It's no other thinking. There's lots of ways of thinking. I don't think that's the only way, but it is a certain type of thinking called analytical thinking. It's a type of thinking that's very prominent in, I think, Western philosophy, particularly certain types of philosophy that emerged, I think, most nicely characterized, I don't want to say emerged, but most nicely characterized by some of the writings of British philosophers. And that's the kind of thinking that's heavily rewarded. And now we're also rewarding, I think, quantitative thinking as well, trying to take analytical thinking and applying rigorous quantitative or data science to it. That's the thinking that's heavily rewarded in this business. And you got to make yourself good at that if you want to compete for a spot that is few and coveted. And if you think someone's going to boost you there all the way because you're a good person, I think you are totally mistaken as to what you're participating in. You're getting into an illusion as to what this business is about. It's not about that at all. Maybe an analogy is actually this YouTube channel, or any YouTube channel. It's also something where I don't know how many accounts there are. There must be millions and maybe tens of millions. Is somebody put in the comments below? Are there 100 million accounts? The vast majority are probably watched by nobody, and then yet I think many people are aspiring to get more people to watch their account. How are they going to do that? They're probably going to do it by trying to make their account more energetic, better, more topical, carve out their own niche, whatever. I think there are many different strategies they would employ. But I think asking for someone to hand them lots of YouTube followers and just push me in the algorithm, whether people want to see me or not, is not something that they would normally be doing. But yet in the academy, you hear that kind of talk. So I don't know what to say about that. I mean, you'd be lucky if you're working on something that really matters, that you don't get saboteurs. And if you're not getting saboteurs, you might not be working on something that really matters. So those are my thoughts. I don't think it's a big secret. Lots of jobs in pharma. Why? Because we have a broken system that's giving them fistfuls of cash for very marginal products. And as long as you're getting tons of cash, easy come, you can create huge bureaucracies where people aren't very accountable. That's true for government, and it's true for any industry that is grown fat on the spoils of battle, as they often have. And then what you have is a situation where you might get paid more, work fewer hours, more flexible hours, and by switching. And that's going to let a lot of rational actors to switch. And then the final piece of the puzzle is you recognize, or you feel, or you really know for sure that what you're doing is not that important. It's not that interesting. You are entirely replaceable. You're not offering any novelty to the space. And that will really kind of disillusion you more. And then you tell yourselves reasons why you are leaving to justify it to yourself post hoc. Those reasons are often that you weren't supported, etc. I think the reality is that I don't know anyone who I think feels really supported, actually, if you're really doing sort of work that you think has mattered. You have to be mission-driven. And I think that's how I'll conclude the video. Mission-driven. What does that mean? I don't know. What's your mission? Only you know your mission. I don't know your mission. You figure out your mission. But once you figure out your mission, you don't need any boost. You don't need any help. You don't need any networking. You put your head down and you do your thing and you fulfill what you believe your mission is. Is your mission to make an impact in vulnerable populations? I think that's a good mission. Put your head down and do it. And don't forget that good intentions are not enough. You have to actually be doing a good job. And that means you got to make yourself better. So you got to read more and become a better analytical thinker and better at data analysis, etc. Whatever your mission is, you should know it very clearly. Don't be wishy-washy about it. Don't have illusions as to what your mission is. And once you know it, you need to expect the fact that if you do it well, and if it is something that is interesting to others, that you are not going to get a boost. You're going to get a knife in the back, and you're going to be having to do it while you are, to some degree, bleeding. And you need to still do that. You need to be resilient and be able to handle that. And I think that's the real best advice. And what you'll give up if you do leave, I think you'll give up. I think for some people, the third part of the reason why they move is the issue. The thing you give up is the freedom to think about whatever you want to think about and work on whatever you want to work on. But if you are in the academy and you're not commenting and thinking about what you want to think about or what matters, you care about early childhood development, but you had nothing to say about school closure, for instance, then you're not giving anything up. You've already cut out your own heart. You've sacrificed yourself already. You're not participating in the freedom. You're not taking advantage of the freedom. You've already given that up. And as long as you've given that up already, You're not really making any sacrifice by jumping. You're going to go to another restrained environment where you can't think or say everything you want to think or say. But if you're seizing that opportunity, then I think you'll be giving up a lot. And if you're seizing that opportunity, I think it will be a lot harder to actually want to go. So those are my thoughts. This is just a little video, I think. What should I title it? Something about the academy, something about leaving the academy, why people feel that way, something about all the things, all the people who were silent in COVID. Why were you silent? You really sat out? You sat out the school closure one? You're doing research in this space, and you sat out school closure? Oh boy, what are you doing this for? What are you doing this for? I mean, that was the single most consequential thing. You don't want to sit that out. It's still not too late. Hop in that. Okay, so on that positive note, if you like this video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, leave a message below. Until next time.